This is Changemakers with Katie Gore, finding the right solutions for the affordable housing community.
Welcome back to my talk with Art Milligan Jr., the President and CEO of the Housing Authority of the City of Charleston. So, Art, let's talk about the touchy subject of gentrification. And it's touchy because you have so many different pockets of neighborhoods and communities within Charleston, and there's limited land. So there's only so much room that you can provide affordable housing, and yet you've got all this new development happening. How do you achieve the balance of preserving a neighborhood, keeping people in a neighborhood they can afford, and what does that balance look like?
It's tough. It's tough. I mean, it's one of those things that you have to listen to what people are saying, and when you're in a neighborhood, just what you mentioned, you don't always get to hear, what are the connections, what are the strong things that are holding the neighborhood together. And the last thing you want to do is come into a neighborhood and do something that pulls families and so forth apart. So fortunately, we're building up, because a lot of Charleston was not more than 1 or 2 stories. And so now we're going up 3 or 4 stories, or even 5 stories. And the technology that comes with building now makes that a lot more successful. So building up is giving us more room in a neighborhood. Change the neighborhood, because again, when you have more than 1 or 2 stories, it changes the whole dynamic, but it will keep more people in an area that they want to be in. That's one of the bigger things. And then again, I say the developers that are being drawn here are coming with open minds, because they know that Charleston is a place, as we've seen, will speak their mind, and people will come forward and try to do what they can to preserve things with Charleston. I think that people are, in fact, recognizing that we've got to have compromise. I mean, I've been in meeting and hear people even mad at each other and mad at developer and so forth, but they all recognize that it's going to be about compromise. You got to be able to say, okay, we're going to preserve certain things. Our historic society does that. We have a property right now that is going to be preserved because it's historical. There's a lot of land, and it could be moved and a lot more density put there, but we would lose what is some major history. And we're going to be able to keep that property as it is. We're going to be able to do some fortifying of it and some upgrade, but for the most part, it stay where it is. That's one of those places where you say, gosh, I can get more units, but then we lose a lot of our past. That's one of the things that Charleston has been able to do, is keep the past here. That's one of the reasons why people come here and they can visit, they can go see things that they may not be able to see in other places. So with that argument of, okay, we've got to get more density, we've got to get more people on this acre than we had, you still got to be patient enough to say, okay, let's take a step back. Let's recognize that there are other entities here who are looking at it in an objective view, and they say, okay, that place is historical, it needs to stay how it is. And we just have to, come to terms with the fact that we're not going to get all what we want, and sometimes you got to step out and come back and say, okay, let's find something else to do that with. But as a whole, I think you can see, and if you're obviously been in Charleston, you see some things that you haven't seen before, because they're high rises and so forth you hadn't seen before, but they're starting to fall into the rest of the community. And it's not all high rising, and it never will be. There'll be places where they're historical and they'll stay where they are, and there are places that are going to be residential and they stay how they are. But on the same hand, there's still a lot of places I look around and see here on Meeting Street that there's still a lot of very tall buildings that are housing people, and we're being able to live here together.
It sounds like you are finding the right balance, and I'm sure it's so difficult between community development, adding more units, and neighborhood and historic preservation. What a tricky line there. How often do you guys use community meetings or social media? Like, how are you building all this collaboration? What are the tools you're using?
That we have a number of things that have been put in place by our city government that require, as you make changes, you have to go get permits and so forth, and that draws draws people together because you're forced to now come and meet about the changes you're going to make. And most of those things are open to the public. We at the Housing Authority, as we're doing development, we have to alert the residents of what we're doing. HUD requires, and as well as the state government, city government requires that you make people aware of the things you're going to do as far as development, and that's government force, which is good because sometimes if you're in the hot heat of the moment, you want to do things quickly, move fast, but you need to slow down to be able to tell residents that we're getting ready to make changes in your neighborhood, and this is what the changes are going to be, and this is how it's going to affect you. And ask for questions and let them know, and then tell them that people that didn't come to the meeting, you need to let them know so they can come ask. And the way you get a good record is by doing the same things you said you're going to do and then doing them consistently. And once you do that, you can earn trust. But until you do that, everybody's a little leery of, are you going to go through the easy way and build something that is popular, but it doesn't take care of everybody? And that's the Charleston way.
You have over 30 years of experience in commercial development, real estate development, affordable housing. Any predictions or opportunities that you foresee in affordable housing for Charleston or even your region? Any solutions that you think have to happen that aren't happening now?
I guess the only thing I would say is that we've got to continue collaborating. That I think that we still have a lot of communities in Charleston as well as in the rest of South Carolina, which South Carolina is going to boom. We got great weather. We're here in the South, relatively inexpensive cost compared to a lot of cities in the North. And I think more people are moving and coming this way because of that. And we've got to think through the same thing the city, the mayor talks about, think through what we're doing. You can't make predictions for just today. You got to think about how you're going to affect things in the next 10 to 20 years.
So I'm sitting here and thinking of what you're saying. And I also want to bring out another highlight that you're probably being modest about, but I cannot wait to hear what you have to say. You guys offer scholarships for educational opportunities of your residents. Share some of those successes because I ask you if there were predictions, but I also know that there are current things that you're doing that are amazing. Tell us more about that.
Well, we've just started some scholarships from different programs, and it is amazing because we're seeing people come alive about it, and they're actually excited, and that takes some of the stigma away from public housing because you're starting to see that there are young people that are very excited and they've got good grades and they're moving forward. And we've just implemented 2 different scholarship programs, and I'm excited. I think that it's a pretty good thing. It's something that we've long talked about, but we've finally been able to put in place. The one thing about Charleston is it's a very giving place, and we've got several different foundations that have come forward and given us some funds, and we put it out to students and so forth in our properties, and they've come out amazingly interested, and some of the students that have won some scholarships are doctors and lawyers to be. So we're very proud of what we're doing. We're just starting it in a strong manner, but the last 2 programs that were started, we've got a host of people that have agreed to get involved. Everybody seems to think that it's a good idea, so we're going to keep pushing that way. Got to help the generation behind you, or we'll go away.
That is impressive. Not a lot of other housing authorities have been able to create this format and then really give back and build up their youth. So kudos to you and your team for making that happen. Speaking of youth, you are actually our second Citadel graduate that we've had on the Quadell Forbes Changemakers podcast. And I say speaking of youth because reminisce on those days at being at the Citadel.
Well, I'll just tell you that I think back about it, and I'm always amazed that I got through it because I didn't consider myself a military type of person, and graduated from high school in '75, and coming to the Citadel was something that I kind of did by, my father was very interested in me going. He said I needed the discipline and so forth, which I thought, discipline meant, that I needed to be able to study better and so forth, so on. But he was talking about life. Going to the Citadel, then when, the first graduated in 1970, and I'm going in '75, so it was an early time for African Americans to be there, and uh, getting there, I learned a lot about myself, about that, you don't have nearly as many limits as you think. The people that were around me, and the people still now, I'm still a part of several different organizations with the Citadel, including the business school, which is Citadel's growing by leaps and bounds. And I would just say that it was a very tough place to get through because it required you to go to limits you didn't think you had. And it's helped me throughout my business life because I always think in terms of the fact that no matter how bad things appear or how tough it seems, if you keep pushing, you can get what you want and you can help people around you. And that's the other thing that we were taught, leave no one behind. So if you're running and jogging and doing kind of activities, you can't forget the guy on your left or your right, or ahead of you or behind you, to make sure that they come with you. And it's formed bonds that I've had with people over the many years. I still keep in touch with my roommate from college, '79. So it's been many years, and a whole host of guys that I talk to on a regular basis. So I think that it was one of my best decisions that my father let me make or made me make. And I would just tell anybody that they want a different atmosphere that gives you the ability to get, because you got to get your education, but to get it and get the ability to know that you have a discipline that allows you to be able to figure out what you need to do to get the next thing done is a big deal. And I go to campus now and see the people that are there, and I'm really proud to see those cadets. And I always think to myself, gosh, I'm just so glad that I got through here because I didn't know it was going to happen for certain. A lot of people left our senior year, our junior year, our sophomore year, and I thought I was going to leave my freshman year, but I made it through it. And I left here and hadn't been back since I came back 2021, and I'm glad to be a part of several different things involved with Citadel. So I would just tell anybody that's thinking about a very different experience for their child, something that will carry from now on. It's more than just getting a degree, which is important. Don't misunderstand. I think it's absolutely important, and there's a lot of places that do an excellent job with that. But getting a degree and being able to see and test yourself, the discipline you put in yourself is a pretty big deal. You look at yourself differently.
And you really paved a way for others to follow too, and what you went through at that particular time in the Citadel's history and our nation's history, and you really, really made inroads to allow others to come after you and thrive. So the legacy piece there cannot be understated. The other Citadel graduate that we had on the podcast was Tony Kimbrough, and he's the CEO of the Veterans Empowerment Organization in Atlanta, Georgia. And he echoes some of what you said as well. And it's so impressive that you guys now can see the value added after the fact, after you've lived through all of the pieces of that, but then you guys are national leaders in your space too. And that maybe the Citadel had a little piece of it, but also your personal commitment and drive is such a full story here for you guys, and just a real nice destiny, I guess. Do you feel like when you're in the Charleston community now, and you've gone to the Citadel, you've been there, been here, you've lived there, all of these pieces. Do you now get to speak into the lives of your residents, other people in the community? What's that feel like for you?
It's a great feeling. It really is a good feeling to know that you can help people. I sometimes say I pinch myself and say, you get to help people, which that's what you're supposed to do anyway. You're supposed to help people. You're supposed to help those who are having problems, or help those that you can just for the sake of it. And then to be paid for it is, feels like almost cheating, because you're getting to do both things. And this community is a place where you see there are a lot of places you can go to volunteer, to do things just because. And I remember that, in Charleston, that's the way it's always been. People try to help people and try to make sure that, the next person gets an opportunity. And so Charleston is a very special place, and the Citadel was and still is. I mean, it's right down the street from one of our developments, and as we go down and develop that, I'm sure we're going to try to get, some input from the Citadel. Is anything that we can do to help, or they can do to help.
You've given us a great reminder now that many of us are in a different stage in our life, as far as, we get to look back on experiences a little differently. So thank you for that reminder. We've been talking with Art Milligan Jr., the CEO of the Charleston Housing Authority in Charleston, South Carolina. Art, thank you so much for providing us wisdom and taking the time to join us.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to Changemakers with Katie Gore. To find out more about Katie, go to quadel.com. That's QUADEL.com. This has been a production of Forbes Books Radio.